This is Protocol 1. I'm James Neilson-Watt. If you are successful but not fulfilled, you're running industrial age software on space age hardware. It's time for an upgrade. Don't settle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome. I'm very excited. I've got a friend on today's episode, Damilare, and I'm excited because I've been, when I say watching you, like I've gone to a lot of Tony Robbins events and you've always been there. And so it's kind of funny to go full circle and in this context. And we've never spoken, like we spoke the other day, but other than that, we've never spoken. I think I maybe said hi to you once, something like that, shook your hand, no doubt. But it's funny to have gone from you being on the stage, and I'll let you get into what you do on the stage, but you on the stage, not as like a regular presenter, and then me in the audience now having you on the show. But how do I put it? Well, anyway, we'll get into it when we talk about why you're on the stage. But I think it's fun because that is the thing that I hope to extract today that helps everyone else realize what it takes to be happy, be fulfilled, be successful, is because of some of the stuff that you're doing that I think that a lot of people are not considerate of. We all think strategy is the way to go, and we're going to talk about some different stuff today. So welcome to the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely happy to be here, James. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to get into your backstory. Who are you? What do you do? Maybe start with where you're at now and we'll work backwards.
Absolutely. I am a peak performance coach, a keynote speaker, and a fitness/dance instructor. I've done this for as long as I can remember. However, one of the things that led up to this point was I worked in the Tony Robbins company known as Robbins Research International for a couple of years as a results coach, where during that time I did close to 3,000 sessions helping people from everything from business to relationship to personal growth, which a lot of people know. What I was doing on stage, we could talk about a little bit more as well, was that I was the lead dancer / energy activator at Tony Robbins events for a couple of years as well too. And I led the team, which in another way to say it is I partnered with Embody, even though I was working for Tony's company, Robbins Research International, partner with Embody to lead the energy activation on stage for all the events. And so if you did go to any Tony event between 2022 and I think even up till March 2025, UPW Virtual last year, I was on stage many times leading the energy, getting people up, physiology first, which we're going to talk about too as well. As just be like the quick catchphrase of the past few years of my life. Before then, we could talk about a whole other phase of life too.
Yeah, well, let me speak to that real quick for those who aren't aware. Tony Robbins, a lot of people think of him as like a motivation guy. He's definitely not. He's a strategist. I think he's like 120 or something companies and 10 billion in sales, and works with government leaders, politicians, kings, all sorts of people. But underpinning his philosophy is this idea of energy. And when you're at one of his events, people, it's funny, I was talking to somebody and I said, I'm going to a Tony Robbins event. And they said, enjoy the dancing. But they said it in a way as if that's all that it was. And I said, you've never been? And said, no, I prefer to somebody else. I won't say who, because they have more strategy. I said, that's interesting. That's interesting. And a lot of people think that strategy is the way to win because they see somebody succeeding and they think, well, they know something more than I do, or they're better at something than I am, or they're more intelligent than I am, and they have a better strategy. Because all of us, as we are, know that when I use a better strategy, I get a better result. And so we have this false loop that develops where it's like, I do better strategy, I get better result. Therefore, my gap between where I am and where you are, or where I am and where I want to be, is strategy is the primary way, because logically that makes sense. In Tony's world, it's a bit different, right? It's energy. And you see that at the events because there's 16,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever. And it's a rock concert. It goes on for 14 hours or longer. And you've got a whole room, and I'm in the Platinum Partnership. So you got a whole room of high net worth individuals, highly successful individuals. And it's the same experience, but more than at a regular event. Like at a regular event, there's high energy. At the Platinum events, there's even more energy because we sort of get it that, as he says, psychology is 80% of your success, 20% is strategy. I've seen that in my life, but you're a results coach and you're on the stage. Talk to me about how you've seen that, not just intellectually understood it, but how you've seen it when it comes to energy being the driving force for somebody's success and why it's not strategy. Like if we had to convince somebody that as much as you believe that between here and there is some magical strategy, it is not strategy that's going to get you there. It's energy. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I will draw from Tony Robbins and then add mine to it, which is part of what I understood. So one of the things that I say right away is for people who focus on strategy and strategy alone, they're cheating yourself. Absolutely, because you are not using or maximizing the potential that we have as humans. One of the principles Tony would teach is what he calls the state, story, and strategy. Three things: state, story, and strategy. Those are the three things you need for success. State, story, strategy. However, many people get the order wrong because we always mostly focus on strategy and strategy alone. I need the plan, I need the system, I need the steps, which again is cheating yourself because that's all very cognitive based. And the brain can only do so much by itself without mental overload, especially when you don't have clarity. Okay, that's strategy. Back it up. Story is the interpretation we're giving our situation. In other words, it is the narrative that we have in our mind regarding a certain problem, limitation, or even joy or success, whatever it is. Because many times, each situation of itself is just a circumstance. How we feel and behave regarding the situation is connected to the interpretation we've made of it. It's the difference between when somebody cuts you in front of the road driving and you interpret that to be rude, you're likely to get angry. Versus when somebody cuts you in front of the road driving and you interpret that to be, well, they must be in a panic or hurry to get somewhere. I hope they get there safe. You're more relaxed. Same circumstance, different interpretation, right? It's a story. And we have stories around what may be going on in our lives, in our relationship, in our business, and all of that impacts. And most times, that story is a narrative filtered through our beliefs and values, which I could go deeper into, but I will not right now. Then we get to state. State is your physical, emotional, mental, just like the whole thing in the moment. And that's where your energy lives. That's where your energy lives. And many times people start from strategy and get stuck in strategy. However, state is the first, because once you are in a sound or peak mental emotional state, or in my book, I talk about it as the pulse, like your baseline energy. When you are in a baseline energy that feels not just like peak, but feels very like, I got this, like this is great, this feels good. It gives you mental clarity to a point where you now give yourself an empowering story. Then with an empowering story, you are in a place where you could execute your strategy even better. So rather than starting with strategy alone, people who do only strategy are missing out in the fact that your state, your mental emotional state, in fact, we are driven most times as humans by our internal physical, mental, emotional state. Our baseline pulse, which is also where our energy lives. And energy drives everything. Energy drives everything. Because if you have the energy to do the work, you will do the work way better than if you did not have the energy to do it. And energy is an internal resource that we can generate at any time, just like that. And I'll be happy to talk about that more. But just as an introduction, let's start from there.
I think when we're reflective, we all understand that there are moments where we know what to do, but we're not doing it. And for anyone unaware of what we're talking about, that's it in a nutshell. You know what to do, but the question you're asking yourself is, why am I not doing it, or not doing it with enough energy and intensity, where I know that if I did do it with more energy and intensity, I would probably get the result. For example, if you are with, someone that you care about, loved one, spouse, you're on a date, etc. You know what to do in that situation. I know what to do with my wife. Let's say if we're out on a date, okay? For all the single people, you're out on a date. You know what to do. You know kind of what to say, what not to say. How you say it and with what energy that you bring to it is going to determine whether or not that person goes home with you, marries you, is happy with you, etc. And you can also not say the right thing, the right strategy, but still get the outcome when you have the right energy about it. Because we are more energy beings than logical beings, and the universe works less logically than we'd like to admit. And so when you're thinking about you trying to achieve or do anything, the last point in time that you were stuck, very unlikely that it was strategy as to why you were stuck. Now, I can hear people already. Well, no, James, it was because my strategy was wrong. The fact that you were stuck is why it was your energy, because even given the right strategy, you wouldn't have done it. Because if somebody came along and said, oh, just do this, if you didn't believe them, quote unquote, you would have just kind of pushed it away. And then, I don't know about you, but I've definitely experienced it where I could see what I was doing was not working. I was presented a new alternative, but I wasn't available to that alternative because my energy wasn't up. And it wasn't until my energy was up that I suddenly was available to the opportunity or the strategy or whatever, and then I could actually take it. And that's what I really want people to understand with this, is that's what we're talking about. It's like there's a million ways of how to do something. Whether you'll do it with enough intensity and energy, and whether you'll be open to pivoting and flowing comes down to your energy state, your physiology, more than it is your strategy. Because as I always say, like knowing how to get a six-pack, you can Google it. Know how to trade stocks, you can Google it. Know how to be a good parent, you can Google it. But there are a few people that actually are those things. Like, we all know how to get a six-pack. Why do you not have one? Why do I not have one? Let's say. I assume you do. Why? It's not how, eat less shit, exercise more. It's why am I not doing that with enough intensity or energy for the duration is because of my state about it, about myself, about other things that are holding me back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you said many of us know what to do. Because we know what to do, but do not do what we know. Many people know what to do, but do not do what they know. And what is the missing link? It's the energy. And how do you tap into the energy? Is your state, your baseline pulse, the physiology. And here's the neuroscience and physiology of it. Okay? Now, when we're feeling stuck in the moment, we're likely clouded mentally. We're not executing the strategy the best way we can. It's not that it's a wrong strategy, but we're just not as focused. And then now we need to drop into the body, which is where we generate the energy. Just for somebody that goes to work out, you do an exercise, you run, you walk, whatever you do, the mere act of moving your body increases the circulation of blood. And when circulation increases, more blood flows to the brain and other parts of the body. And guess what? That in itself starts to give you mental clarity. Also, when you move your body, the nervous system and brain releases neurotransmitters that help you enhance your state. One of that is the endorphins, known as the happy hormone. In fact, D.O.S.E, DOSE. You got to remember this. And there's research out there. D is the dopamine, the motivation, the reward that comes from expectation of something. That happens when you're moving your body because automatically that gives you the blood circulation, the brain is clearer, and then the focus that comes from, oh, I have a goal is elevated. It's the oxytocin, which is also the bonding hormone, which if you're then not only moving the body by yourself, but you're doing it with other people, that builds trust and connection, and again, elevates those positive feelings in your body. It's the serotonin, which is the mood booster. When you move your body together with other people, it automatically boosts your mood because the brain is saying, oh my gosh, this is fun. Oh, we love it. You're getting a dose. In fact, a lot of antidepressant medications are what are called SSRIs, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which in a nutshell helps make more serotonin available in the bloodstream. And then E is the endorphin. And what happens is the reason we're able to generate so much energy when we go to this event and go 12, 14-hour days is that every so often we're getting up and moving our body. And people say, oh, I love the dancing. It's not just dancing for dancing's sake. It is energy generation because we're using our physiology, our body, to shift. I mean, we're just sitting down right now And what? I drop my shoulders, I drop my head, and my hat, and there. In a matter of seconds, I'm going to start feeling sad or depressed within because my emotional state is connected to my body. And the reason we know this is if you see someone on the street just walking and head down, shoulder down, whatever, automatically, if I ask you how are they feeling, what are you going to say? Sad, depressed, not feeling too good, versus shoulder up, chest is up, eyes straight. Oh yeah, a bit confident. No, they feel good. They're happy, whatever. Then I ask, did the person who you thought was sad decide and say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a little sad. Maybe I should just drop my head on my shoulder or put my hand on my chin. There was no cognitive interpretation from how they were feeling to how the body responded. It was automatic. And if there is such an autonomous connection between the internal emotional state, which is where the energy is generated, to the body, then we can reverse engineer that and use the body to generate the energy that we want. And that's the power of the physiology.
Because if people will not believe that initially unless they've had the experience. But if I said to you, make yourself feel sad, it's like, what would you do? Well, I'd focus on sad stuff. I would change my energy. I'd lower it down. My posture would go down. Like I would do things and then I would feel sad. And you go, oh, so did I feel sad or did I do things that contributed to the feeling? Because bad shit happens, right? Someone that I love dies, something in the business happens, etc. But if I'm feeling a certain way, there's an initial, maybe unconscious response to that thing because I have conditioning. Like if I said to you, don't think about an elephant, your brain tends to picture an elephant. Every time I say elephant, your mind is trying to anticipate what to talk about. So it says, okay, he's saying elephant. Maybe we're going to talk about an elephant. It brings up a picture of an elephant. I didn't say, think about an elephant. I said, don't. But your brain doesn't hear it, right? So when things are happening, we have a conditioning and then there is a response to the environment. And it comes from our conditioning as to our response. But then after that, we have a choice as to whether or not we can let that continue. So it's like somebody makes a movement next to me. And let's say I've been beaten up before. I'm going to go, I'm under attack. The moment that I recognize that I'm not, or that I'm safe, I now have a choice and an ability to either let that linger and continue to control me, or make a shift to stop or slow that down. I used to suffer, and I say suffer on purpose, a lot from anxiety, depression for most of my life. And the shift for me came with accepting that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Things are going to happen, but how long I suffer from them is up to me. And so therefore, if I can make myself sad, and everyone listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about, if you're honest with yourself, what are you going to do if you are sad? Oh, I'm going to do these things. What are you going to do if you're happy? I'm going to do these things. What are you going to do if you're angry? I'm going to do these things. And so you know what your physiology is in those moments, and you know how to create that feeling in yourself. And for those of you who are parents, you will definitely know what I'm talking about. Your child, you're not feeling good, but your child comes over to you. What do? You don't go, oh man, little buddy, like life's hard and I don't know if I'm going to pay the rent this month. I'm going to be homeless. You're not going to do that to your kid. Okay. You're going to go and you're going to change your physiology and you're going to say, hey bud, how's it going? And you're going to put on a brave face, as we say, right? Brave face is you changing your physiology, right? It's just you going, I'm going to make a different conscious decision with my body, mind, my focus, my energy, etc. in spite of the situation. I think that a lot of us meet our needs through our suffering. And so we become conditioned to suffer more than we, you know what I mean? More than we choose it. Because I'm not choosing the suffering. It's like, well, you are, because if I came along with a really hot stick and stuck it in your backside, you'd move, which means that you know, certain pain is motivating for you to shift, and this pain is motivating for you to stay. In your coaching experience, what do you see with people that maybe somebody listening to this can first catch themselves, and then what can they do to start shifting that? Because it's while we can change our state instantaneously, reprogramming ourselves to not have that constant conditioning that we always come back to, that is really the game, right? What can someone do to identify a a pattern in themselves and then begin to start to shift that.
I love how you keep saying, begin to shift that, to shift that, to shift that. Because side note, that's actually the title of my book. A shift needs to happen. Shift. And really that shift is layered through multiple things. The triad, which Tony Robbins teaches, physiology first, that's the most important shift, because once we can make a radical shift in how we're using our body, we immediately tap into energy through the emotional resources that we have. Physiology. The second thing, which is also connected to a story that I talked about earlier on, is our focus and beliefs. And I love how much you said that we make ourselves feel a certain way. Many people often look at feelings as just happenstance, but there's something we've done subconsciously that generated that feeling. And part of that is the focus. What we focused on in the moment, good or bad, the meaning we gave to it, is what is impacting how we're feeling. And that focus is side by side with our beliefs and values. I give the example, Aaron, of driving. We're able to focus on something because the belief or value that we hold underneath is what is filtering the interpretation we're giving to the situation, which is the third one, the language and the meaning. If I say like, oh, that's very terrible, I feel so frustrated, my brain hears that and starts to generate that feeling. Versus, oh, that wasn't actually that bad, just a mild annoyance, whatever, and you move on. All of that. And so for someone listening to this, if you're feeling stuck, either energetically, emotionally, or you are at a place where you are not able to shift your internal state, in the moment, the first thing always is energy, which is your physiology. How are you breathing? Deep or shallow? Do you need a drink of water? Do you need to wash your face with water or pour some on your head? Move your body. A radical shift in your body increases the circulation, gets blood flowing to the brain and back to the body, which gives clarity, gives you the dose, which I talked about, depending on whether you do it by yourself or with other people. There you get that. Because then when you change your baseline mental emotional state, when you change your pulse, then you are in a much better state to have mental clarity, to give yourself an empowering story, which is the focus and the belief. Then, of course, the language that you use is different. And the thing we always say is, if you're going to make up a story about a situation, you might as well make up an empowering one than the one that does not serve you. Because if it does not serve you, then you're not making progress. And so think about it this way. I can shift my state by moving my body as quickly as I can, radically, to generate that energy. That gives me the mental, emotional clarity to focus on what's most important, to focus on the results, focus on the goals, to be able to execute the strategy. And then I'm able to make an empowering meaning of the situation. It works like that. 3 major things. Go ahead.
I see it clinically. So my background was a chiropractor, and we focused on chronic pain and stress issues. And one of the biggest things that I noticed was we would often, like we meaning the client or whoever is stuck, right? We'll set a goal that unless I get that, then it was a failure. So it's like I'm massively overweight, but my goal is to have a 6-pack in 6 months. And so I'm setting a goal that is impossible by reasonable people's standards, which can be motivating. There's this whole concept of setting an impossible goal. I think what that presumes, though, is that you have the resources and the resourcefulness to actually go after that. Whereas I'd say for regular people like me, the thing is we need to have a step ahead and we need to build momentum. We need to spiral up, because it's very easy to spiral down. If things don't go the way that we expect them to via the blueprint of how we think things should be, then there's this little nick, and it's a death by 1,000 cuts. You just start going down with your emotions, down with your physiology, etc. So when someone says, well, I can't do that, for me it's, what can you do for dancing? Can you just wiggle your shoulders a little bit? Can you put a tiny little smile on your face? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. Right? And you go, okay, that's cool. Can you breathe a little bit deeper? And then as they do it, you can start to, because you get this little bit of shift, a little bit of shift. Tony talks about like 2 degrees or whatever. It only takes small shift. For me, recently, I'd been out of the gym for a while and I was going back, and I tend to put this pressure on myself because I know what I can do when my mind's set to it. But if my mind is not set, then what ends up happening is I apply the strategy And so I go and I try and go hard, but the mind's not there with it yet. And so it fizzles out. And then I feel bad about it. And so what I would do is I would say, I'm just going to go to the gym and just like lift some stuff, do some things. Now I'm experienced, but I didn't focus on what I was doing, how I was doing it, how I was measuring it. I didn't put expectations on. I just said the expectation is I'm going to go, I'm just going to lift some stuff until I don't want to anymore. So I'd lift some stuff and then I'd go home. And then the next day I'd go and I'd lift some stuff, maybe do 1 or 2 sets of this, 1 or 2 sets of that. What I was doing was conditioning myself to be present at the gym, doing some exercise, making some change, building some momentum. I was beginning the spiral such that you get to a point where you say, this is great, but I want to do more now, because now you're feeling good. You're becoming addicted to it. You're starting to make a positive shift. And so I think a lot of people let themselves down where they go, I'm going to make a change, and they set an impossible goal. And that's fine, but they're not focusing on what they're going to do next. What's the next action step? It's not have a 6-pack, make $1 million, whatever. It's like, that's the big direction that I'm going in, but I'm going to very contently make small shifts, because a small shift for me now is massive compared to a lot of people and to myself where I was. It's small for me now though, because my resourcefulness has changed. My resources have changed. My energy and focus have changed. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. What you were just describing is what I call the if and when conundrum, where people keep themselves stuck. And basically, it's when in our head, we've created a story that X needs to be Y for my life to be Z. When I get 6-pack, I will feel good about myself. If I can make a little X more money, then, right? So it's the if, then, when. And all of this creates rules around our joy. And at the end of the day, we are not able to focus on the progress we're making. And we're then feeling stuck and disappointed. And then we're not having the drive to keep going on. Or we are being super hard on ourselves and we're letting the joy pass us by. And the shift is small, consistent actions over time to build momentum. Yes, you want to know your outcome, which is your eventual destination, and you want to hone in to the little things you're doing every day to get you there, because simply progress equals happiness. If all you're focusing on a marathon run is the finish line, and every stride you make, you are not celebrating that, you're likely not going to finish. Yes, you want to keep your eyes on the outcome, and you want to do the one step after the other and enjoy the process. Because when you enjoy the process, you are also giving yourself an energy and emotional resource to keep going. It's got to finding joy in the journey. And that's the biggest shift. And so we want to move away from if, then, or when, then, to the now. Being present in the moment, being present in what needs to be done, being present in the journey, and to just keep going.
Two things that I just realized. One is obviously the goals we set keep us stuck, and the stories we have keep us stuck. But there's often a self-serving nature to that, because it fits with how I identify or the perspective of my worldview, and it validates me. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. We don't do things that only cause us pain. No one, like, the reason we do things, even if they do cause pain, is because they cause pleasure in some regard. And so we're always doing things for ourselves. It's just whether it's a vehicle that is positive for us, positive for others in the universe, etc. But we're always doing things. So anyone listening, if you're like, no, I'm suffering with this, it's like, think about it, because you're getting a benefit from it in some regard. Whether it is, oh, my life's so terrible, I feel significant because of how I have the most problems. Or when I complain about myself, people come and connect with me. Or I've got all these big problems that I need to solve and to grow and to get through, right? Or from all my problems, I'm going to be able to contribute to people. Or because all of my problems, I get so much variety from it. All of my problems, I get so much certainty. I know that, like, you have this problem, right? We are self-serving in that regard. I think that the second thing, the aha that I just had talking to you was, I think most of us have this view of success that the best success is the one where we were nonchalantly doing things and it just happened, because that means that I'm extra awesome. Like if I didn't try very hard and I got this big result, or I just did this one thing, got this big result, or it happened really quickly and overnight for me, that we put that on a pedestal as that person must have been better, or we meet more of our needs, or we feel something more than the success that comes from grind. Like most of us like the idea of wave a magic wand to get success. That's why we take a pill for weight loss, or we get surgery for weight loss, etc. We buy a lottery ticket. We're looking for the easy path. I think that's partly because we think that it would make us happy, so we want it. But I also think that part of it comes down to almost this validation of, I didn't have to do so much to get it, I must be really good. And I think that the acceptance of the fact that all good things require effort, risk, time is hard to swallow, because when you're talking about the marathon, people are looking at the end because they want to get there, and they're not falling in love with the journey of getting there. Like you look at top sports people, they win a lot. They're rich, successful, but they are obsessed with the craft. The success is a side effect of the craft. And even if they were not the NFL champ, they'd be obsessed. Like you've got coaches for high school football who are obsessed. Now you could say, well, that's going to go nowhere. Yes, because their measure is not whether or not they're going to be something. Their measure is in what I'm doing, the process, the growth, right? They're not looking at an external thing as their they're looking at the championship or whatever, but they're not saying, well, this thing that I'm achieving is much less than that, so I won't even do it. But the thing is that all of those top coaches, somebody in the comments is going to butcher me, all those top coaches were probably coaches here at some point too. And so what we forget, I think, is that setting an impossible goal is great. Setting a big thing is, in terms of a direction, is amazing. But success is not in getting there. Success is in who you become in your pursuit of it. And most importantly, what are you doing today, right now, that is just chipping away at it? Because you will speed up naturally the more you chip away, because you'll get better at chipping until you'll have chipped enough that you can then buy a bigger chipper. And then eventually it's just, other people are chipping for you, and it's just like momentum's happening. But it starts with you making change. That's what I'm really realizing. It's like, it's not about how do I make the right chip and then all the wall falls down. If you try and get the right chip, you're going to be chipping all the time. But if you just start actually digging away at it, you'll figure it out as you go. This is so funny. I've done so many Tony events, and almost every hour, I'm like, oh gosh, I get it, right? Like there's always something constantly. And it'll be the same thing that I already got last time or the time before, but there's like a different layer to it. This is one of those moments for me right now. This is very introspective here. There's a realization that's happening for me in saying this, that you are better off starting and doing and having the energy that I'm in this to learn it, and I'm going to look at my map and make sure that I'm on track. And I'm going to measure things, because if it's not measured, it's not managed. And therefore I will definitely fail if I don't measure and manage. But I'm not fixated on the achievement. I'm fixated on solving the problems necessary to get me to my destination. And I'm going to chip away. And as I do it, I'm going to learn. And most of us don't start and don't continue with enough energy where we get the learning. And we're looking for the magic. And the magic is in the process.
The magic is in the process. I often will tell the story of, if you're driving on the highway and you are not sure where you're going, and you pull over and park on the side, and you bring out a big map. If I go left, it will lead here, but then if I go right, it will lead here. But I'm not quite sure. Maybe I go straight. While you were there, obsessing over the map, obsessing over your strategy, the person who took the wrong exit already figured out it was the wrong exit and retraced, because action brings clarity, because they're focused on the process and they're learning, and because they have interpreted it to mean that it is not failure because I learned something. And that's why, what's his name? Was it Edison? I think he was one who made the light bulb and had to make like a 999 whatever version before he made the light bulb. And what was said was, I did not fail. I just figured out 900 plus ways of how not to do it, right? And that's that mindset. And leading up to this, you talked about a couple of things which you highlighted, and I want to go back into it. Is that everything we're doing is filling a need, and it may not be directly obvious to us. It may be a back end we're filling a need, but we are filling a need. And you mentioned them, the 6 human needs, right? Significance, certainty, uncertainty, variety, love, connection, growth, and contribution. And problems are signs of growth. Sometimes Tony will say, and I've heard him say, is that the only problem we have is that we think that we shouldn't have any problem. Problems are signs of growth because problems is what shapes us. Problem is what helps us build the resilience. Problem is what helps us become better, being able to tackle it. And it's all part of the journey, the highs and the lows, and the challenging time, or what I would say, I would say the joy and the challenges. And if my focus is, I'm going to learn and grow through this even better, contribute and make a positive difference through it, then I feel good about myself. That way I get some significance, which is not bad. I'm just not leading with that. I become better at it, which creates some certainty and predictability of my skill level. I enjoy the variety of the highs and the lows and the challenges and the joys. And before I know it, even the people I'm helping or the positive feedback I'm making gives me love and connection through the feedback, or even just from my own internal generation of positive emotional feelings about what I'm doing. And just like that, I just hit all my 6 human needs, from focusing on the journey, from finding joy in the journey, from learning through the process, from generating energy in my body, to just keep going. And that's what people can take away.
Something I like to point out to people is we're often really good at giving advice to others and then terrible for ourselves because we have an internal context that the external person doesn't have, and we use it to justify why things are the way they are. But everyone always does that because they always have more information, but they're misattributing or misinterpreting things and giving things meaning that doesn't necessarily either exist or serve them. And so the worst person to ask for advice from is you to yourself, because you have perspectives and meanings and context that others don't have. And so you're clouded by that. And so asking a third person is the best way because they see it differently. Now, you've always got to have a trust of who you're asking advice from. There's plenty of people that I would trust on, certain things and not other things. Like, I'm not going to ask my 3 times divorced friend how to have a good marriage. I will ask him how to get divorced and then not do that. You know what I mean? I'm going to ask my successful friend for advice around success and not how to be a dad if he's not a good dad. But I think that the first thing that we can all do is look at ourselves and say, from the third person perspective, what is it that, in my case, James, what should James be doing and focusing on? If I was to coach a person in this situation, what advice would I give them? And so I like to write down the problem, because when it's in your head, it's a mess of thoughts and things like that. And when you write it down, you have to give yourself perspective. And then you can, when you've got the perspective, because you've got to clearly communicate it can't just be a bunch of random crap. Or these days with AI, I'll just like voice it all out and be like, summarize what this is without emotion. And then I'll look at that and I'll name it. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's John. And what advice would I give to John? And then I might work with AI to come up with a plan for John, or I work with myself to come up with a plan for John. I'm like, what does John need to do? And often it becomes a lot more clear when you do it like that, because you're not in your own bullshit. You can instead see it for what it is without the story. Because if you're trying to, if John was trying to embellish what was going on, you would cut him off. You would say, let's not focus on all the emotions. Like, this doesn't help me understand the problem. Tell me what the problem is. What's the problem? What's the problem? Whereas in your own head, you're validated by your feelings. And it's like, well, these are my feelings and these are real. When I accepted that feelings aren't real, they are things that my brain is using as a tool. And emotions are great for passion and love, right? But they're not something that's otherwise going to help me. Like, if I'm trying to do some math, me being emotional about the math doesn't help the math. The math is the math. My finances are my finances. My business strategy is my business strategy, no matter how I feel about it. So if you can put it onto paper, name it somebody else, and have a third person perspective of it, I've always gotten a lot more clarity in doing that than when I stay in my head. Tony talks about, like, a lot of people get really stuck and I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed. And it's like, write it down. And they write down 3 things they have to do. And you're like, now group it into one thing. What is it? What's my kids? So just like, love my kids. You go, okay, so you less stressed. Like, no, it's more than that. And you go, well, write it down. Turns out it's like 4 things that you're just going through in your head over and over again. Because we feel we get a need met when we stress about our problems, because you would have seen this. I would have clients or whatever, and there's almost this invalidation that happens when you just point out what the actual problem is and what the solution is. I've, when I was less experienced, have lost clients by just telling them, just do this, it's going to be easy. Because I had experience, but I wasn't validating their emotions about their problem. And so instead of going, oh gosh, thank you, James, yes, and then doing the thing and getting the result, they were meeting their needs so much through it that they needed to have the story. They needed to have the suffering. And when I took it away, who am I? Like, who are they? What is their identity without this problem? And so instead of going, great, this thing that I complained about forever is now gone, it's like, holy shit, well, who am I? And so what do? We go back to the thing that we know, which is the suffering in it. And so if you truly want to break through, one, you have to be open that your story is bullshit. It's probably not true and your emotions are not helping you. Number 2 is actually look at what the problem is and make a plan. And the best way to do that is out of your head onto paper or onto your screen, name it as a different person and give that person advice. And then I play this game where I will write the advice out, and then I will pretend that I just received a message from my coach with my plan. And then I go, oh, thanks. And I name the coach, and then I just do the advice. Now, I have done this to myself. I extrapolate the problem, but the point of the story is doing that gets the emotion out of it. And I think that all of us can understand when emotion is supposed to be there. When I'm with my kids, good emotion. Bring good emotions, not bad ones. And by bad, I mean, things that aren't going to serve you. When I'm with my wife, empowering emotions, right? When I'm working on my problems, the only emotion that I should have is the ones that empower me to shift, not the ones that disempower me and tell me about things. Like, I'm about to fly to the States next week, and I don't like flying very much, especially when I'm away from my family. And so there's a story there. And so either I can suffer the entire time, and the plane will not crash, and I will suffer and not crash. Or I can fly, not suffer, and not crash. Because if I'm going to crash and I'm going to suffer during, then I suffered twice. That was a big shift for me when I used to fear flying. Was, well, the emotion's not helping. Let's shift it. This is pre-Tony, and so it's been interesting to go full circle and understand these things more. But what's some advice that you would give for somebody who's stuck in their story? And what are some things that they could do today that would help them to shift that? If they're honest with themselves and they said, no, I do want to change. Not just, yes, I want to change, James, but like, no, I'm actually willing to get off my ass and change. What advice would you give that person?
Yeah, absolutely. And you started it, and now I'm going to layer up on it. When you're in your head, you're dead. And when you hear that, it's easy to get stuck cognitively in the looping thought. Because I ask my clients, I say, one thought says you suck, and the other one says, actually, no, you are great. Those 2 thoughts are in your head, and then you're arguing with each other. Which is louder? Which one wins? And then more. Oh, no, actually sucks. So mom says you suck. Dad says you suck. My business partner says I suck. But no, I think I'm the greatest ever. And then it's all of that in their mind. Get out of your head. Get out of your head, back to physiology. Get out of your head into your body. The quickest way to change how you're feeling in the moment is a radical shift in the way you use your body. A couple of breaths, a couple of movement, hydration, reset. Physiology first. I would do that. Then, what you mentioned about writing it down, absolutely, because that creates a distance. It takes it out of your head into paper. When it's on paper, now you have the visual distance of reading it. It's no longer looping in your head. You can see it on paper, and now you have a different perspective. Is that really true? Or is this just a story I've made up? What else could this mean? At that point, now you start to ask yourself empowering questions to shift the perspective such that you can see things in the moment you're not seeing. That's the value of taking out of your head into paper to create that distance. And of course, the action that follows, because you've changed your state, you've changed your focus, which then helps you change the language and the meaning you're given the situation. and impacts action. And there's also two things, actually, when we think about the triad, which it's often not talked about, but is equally important. You mentioned it, is the identity, how I see myself, my perception of myself, the emotional state I'm creating all the time, what I'm focusing on, and the meaning I'm giving my life. They're all tied to the identity that I'm performing. If I really want to change, I also need to change the identity, how I see myself. In fact, name it. And that identity, which is the strongest force to how we live our life, must also then be connected to a compelling future. What are my outcomes? And so when I'm creating an emotional state, when I'm generating energy in my body through physiology, it's serving the identity of how I see myself. And that identity is connected to and working towards a compelling future. So it's actually 5 things. Physiology first, a radical shift in your body to generate energy and mental, emotional clarity. Focus and beliefs, what I'm giving my attention to based on my underlying values and beliefs. Language and meaning, the words and phrases I'm using to describe my situation and how they're impacting my mental, emotional state. Identity, the overarching pillar of who I am, and what I do based on how I feel in the moment, which I have control over because I am the one making myself feel how I feel in that moment. And then the compelling future, which is the journey, where I'm headed, and enjoying the process and learning through it and growing through it. And it's a continuum like that. Physiology first, change your focus and beliefs, so just change the story, the language and meaning that you're giving it, identity, and through action, moving along with the journey. And that's it. So it all does not happen in the head. It's not all cognitive. That's where we're stuck. It's using the whole of it. And I want to extend this and say, depending on what you believe, and actually when I talk about energy, the way I break it down, there's the physical energy, there's the emotional energy, mental, and the spiritual. And the spiritual is one that's connected to like our intuition or, our spirit, because we're, as humans, depending on what you believe, we're beyond just the mind. We're beyond just the body. We do have a spirit in us, which is the breath, the life force, however you define it. And there is a guide that comes with that too. I just want to put that out there.
And I just want to add to what you said. It's not only the things we say out loud. It's something that I realized that when we talk about language and meaning, my initial interpretation for years was it was the things I was saying. And what I came to realize is that it's what you're saying, which can be both words. Well, that's what I mean. It can be words that you're saying, and it also can be thoughts that you're saying in your head, and it can be stories that you were saying. And so ultimately, what the language really is it's the meaning that you're giving it. And the meaning can come across as the words you say, like, oh my God, you cut me off. And it can also just be like, ugh, right? You didn't say anything, but there was a meaning there. And if you thought about it for long enough, you can come up with what that meaning is. Like, what happens if I don't, make this sale? Well, this is going to happen. Okay, so what's going to happen then? And you keep going down that path and you realize that it leads to, I'm going to die, my family's going to leave, I'm going to be alone, everything's going to be terrible. That is the meaning that you were giving it, not I must get this sale because it's really important. That's the superficial bullshit part of the meaning. The real meaning was lose family, going to die, have nothing, blah, blah, blah. Because your mind went there straight away. You just didn't want that to be why. And so you softened it because to think if I don't get this sale, I'm going to die, that's stupid. Let's play the game then. What happens if you don't get the sale? What happens then? What happens then? And you'll find that your answer will be progressively negative and stacking instead of, well, if I don't get the sale, I'll go and get another one. What if you don't get that one? I'll just go and get another one. What if you don't get that one? Well, I'm just going to keep trying until I get a sale. If that's your honest answer, then you've shifted the meaning. But most people, it's like try 3 times and then negative. Try once and then negative. And that's why we get stuck with it. Something else too is it's very easy to go, oh, so I need to understand myself. So what you're saying is like, I got to understand myself. I got to go and get all the personality tests. I got to go and get all the stuff done. I got to figure out who I am and let me go on this journey to figure out who I am. And then it's like, no. That's like the last thing that you do in the sequence. That's the thing that you spend, in my opinion, the least amount of energy and time on, because that appears to you when you've done the other things. 80-20. 80% is going into psychology, physiology, shifting things. The 20% is going, now that I have these resources in me, this energy, this resourcefulness that I've brought up, Now I'm going to look at what might that be so I can shift it. What identity might currently exist that I want to change and have a new identity. So I don't spend 6 weeks in a retreat finding myself. It's you spend 6 weeks shifting your physiology, developing new habits and protocols for who you are and how you act. And then in so doing, you identify with the patterns that serve you and you just go, that's who I am, rather than trying to understand the past, the negative, and lying on the table and telling somebody about all my problems and stories, because you then live in that and you validate that. And so if we consider that most of our memories are bullshit, distorted, deleted, etc., and they're all jaded by the meaning that we give them, then we can't really trust them. We can only trust what I'm experiencing now. And so 80% goes into that, like bottom of that. You said continuum, I'd say pyramid. It's 80% goes into that pyramid. Like you do more of this first, then you do this. You just that self identity stuff comes later. Because I know for a fact that someone listening to this goes, okay, so I need to go and figure out who I am. It's like, no, you've missed the point. You need to go and shift your physiology and the other things, and then the identity stuff comes after that. Or when you go and attack the problem of what is my identity, you're attacking it from a frame of low energy. And therefore you gain energy from the problem of figuring out who you are. And so you now just perpetuated the cycle. That's the thesis for today, guys, is shift your energy so you don't get energy from the problems, and then you will find a way. And I think the hard thing that people are going to, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. The hard thing that I think people are going to experience is, I said it before, so if the problem was not that big of a deal, because when I shifted my physiology and my focus and my meaning, I suddenly realized it was small. I wrote it down. It was just one thing or two things, three things, whatever. In the grand scheme of stuff, it was not so big that I couldn't write it down on a piece of paper. Then what does that mean for me? Because there's a pain of change that happens where unless I'm growth oriented, I am my identity, as you said, but there is a leap that has to happen whereby there's an acknowledgement of, I've chosen suffering, just like pain has happened, but I've chosen suffering through my actions. And I've seen it a lot in my practice and with my consulting businesses of like that there's a moment where we have to make a decision that we're going to shift, or we end up just staying where we are, because even though I've built it all up and I've realized that it's like, oh gosh, my whole life is going to be different on the other side of shifting this. What has that meant for my existence up until now? And there becomes this ego battle. How do you help people to handle that and make that decision, burn the boats, shift into the new identity that comes through that realization as we change our physiology and the other things we spoke about?
We talked about it is once you change the physiology, then you have a better emotional state and clarity to be able to solve the problem. Because I tell people, just shifting your physiology does not automatically make the problem go away. However, it puts you in a state where you can see things more clearly, you feel more empowered, you can access the resources that you have. And through that journey is then how you begin to shape the identity that represents that compelling future that you want. And it always starts first from your state, from your mental, emotional state, from your energy and how you're able to tap into that. It's as simple as that. And you're right. Some people will say, oh, I'm going to go spend this 12 days or 10 days, 7 days, 5 days to find myself. I am here. And in the moment, through my thoughts, my actions, my emotion, my behavior, my interaction, my environment, everything that is contributing to my interaction right now. Because even if I were to go away somewhere to have that solitude and reflection time, I'm still coming back into this environment that I am right now. And so sometimes the change could be an environment, but it's also connected to how I am in control. And that's the end of it. Like we talked about it. I am the one making myself feel the way I'm feeling. I'm the one that is able to generate the energy that I'm generating. I am the one able to focus on the things I'm focusing. I am the one making up the story, which you talked about, right? The mind is always deleting, distorting, and generalizing. And many times it's not actually the fact. It's just based on, again, the lenses and the filters in our psyche. And I know this may be a lot for a lot of people. I would say, go back, listen to it, pause, digest it, and it absolutely makes sense.
Well, what are you working on at the moment that you think that people would love to hear more about? I know you got a book. I know you're doing some cool stuff. We spoke about some other things. What do you think people would want to Want to learn more about what you're doing?
Tickled right from the beginning because a lot of our conversation was around like shift, and she was like, how did we know that the title of my book is not that one? Where is it? It is this one. All right, this one. There we go. Shift happens, right? And it's the energy reset guide for high achievers who are tired of running on empty. That's it. And a lot of it is what we talked about, like how we generate energy through our body. And you see even just from the cover photo, it's a very energetic one. And that's right, like how we use our body to generate emotion, the power of the present moment, our mental emotional state, our baseline pulse, or checking in with each other, with ourselves each time. How am I just feeling at the moment? You know, we check our temperature, we check the weight, we check all the numbers. How many times do we actually pause to check in with ourselves and say, how am I feeling in this moment? So knowing and using that are all very important in just how we interact. And a lot of that is written in the book. And also the power of micro breaks, being able to pause in a moment and use, you know, the resets, the things like your breath, movement, your focus, writing things down. And those micro resets to regenerate energy so we have more focus to do the things we want to do. So absolutely, yes, Shift Happens. It's out. It's on Amazon all over the world. So whatever Amazon you are, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, Amazon in Germany, whatever it is, you can definitely find the paperback and the hardcover. So definitely available. So that's something I'm working on. That's something that just came out and that people can go get. Absolutely. And the other thing is I'm doing a lot of speaking gigs these days. I'm just being invited to conferences, events, and organizations to talk about these things, you know, energy, joy, team building, how to combat burnout and build resilience when the work feels difficult, how to bring the team together in cohesion so that they can perform even better. And I'm doing that. I call that joy is your competitive advantage, the human edge in the age of AI, and also how, you know, leaders create high-performing teams. And I draw from human psychology, human needs psychology. I draw from neuroscience. I draw from athletic training, which we didn't get to talk about today. My previous experience of doing an IRONMAN, swimming 2.4 miles, biking 116 miles, and running a full marathon and Ironman Chattanooga, and other triathlon races that I've done, the 70.3s. I even did actually Ironman 70.3 Sydney, Australia, and I did Florida too. So all of that, you know, the endurance, the resilience, the focus, the language that I tell to myself, the mantras, like the present in the moment, all those tools, I teach them through workshops and speaking events. And of course, lastly, through coaching as well, that I work with clients. I'm working right now on launching a group coaching program. It's called Find Your Jam. Jam is JAM. It's the Joy Activator Method, which is basically, you know, how to reset your energy and get back in flow if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling burnout, if you're feeling like you lost the vibe, or maybe you're not actually seeing it as if you feel burnout, but for a moment you're just feeling like things feel monotonous or routine again. I'm having that as an opportunity to get in. So definitely all of that are in the works, and I'm happy to share. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'll make sure that all those links are in the description and people can go and check that out. I really appreciate you. We're going to distill down what we've talked about today into a protocol. The thesis here is that at any moment there is only one thing that you need to be focused on doing. And once you implement that, bring that into your psychology, bring that into your environment, your habits, you can then move to the next one. Because if we try and do multiple things at once, we end up doing nothing. And so protocol one is, what is that one next thing that you need to be doing? And this may be the listener's protocol. And so we're going to distill that down, put that in the members group for everyone to go and get. Damilare, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And looking forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, James. And yes, looking forward to staying in touch.
That's this week's Protocol 1. If you want to know exactly where you stand across all 6 vectors, take the free assessment at 6vectorassessment.com. It takes 5 minutes. The truth takes less. Don't settle.